Elara was called a failure for protecting her mother's old garden, while everyone around her told her she was wasting her life. But when a powerful man offered her more money than the land was worth, she discovered there was something hidden behind that garden, something her mother never told her. The first time people called Elara Voss a failure, she was standing behind a small wooden table, selling jars of homemade preserves outside the old market. She was 30 years old, wearing the same brown coat she had repaired twice with her own hands. In front of her were jars filled with fruits and herbs from the garden that once belonged to her mother. People walked past her every morning. Some stopped to buy. Most only looked, but there were always a few who laughed. She studied for years just to end up selling jam on the street, one man said. Another woman answered, "Some people are simply not meant for more." Elara heard those words. She always did, but she never replied. She had learned that explaining her choices to people who had already judged her only made her more tired. The truth was simple. She was not selling because she had no ambition. She was selling because someone had to take care of what her mother left behind. The garden was small. It was located behind an old house at the edge of town, far from the busy streets where wealthy families lived. The plants were not rare. The land was not valuable to most people. But to Elara, it was the last place where she still felt close to her mother. Her mother, Morel Voss, had spent more than 20 years caring for that garden. She knew every plant, every season, every small change in the soil. When Elara was a child, she used to sit beside her mother while she worked. She remembered asking questions. "Why do you spend so much time with flowers and vegetables?" Her mother had smiled and answered, "Because things that are cared for every day become stronger." At the time, Elara did not understand. Years later, she finally did. After her mother passed away, relatives told her to sell the property. They said the garden was useless. They said she was wasting her life. Elara had considered it. For several weeks, she looked at the documents on the kitchen table and thought about signing everything away. She was tired. She had lost the person who always believed in her, and without her mother's voice, every decision felt uncertain. But one afternoon, she walked into the garden and found an old notebook hidden inside a wooden box. It belonged to her mother. Inside were notes about plants, recipes, and small observations about life. One sentence was written on the first page: "Never abandon something just because others cannot see its value." Elara read that sentence many times, and she decided to stay. Not because she believed she would become rich, not because she wanted to prove anyone wrong. She stayed because that garden was the only thing she had left that still carried her. Mother's care. Months passed. She began making products from what grew there: jams, herbal mixtures, small baskets with dried plants. Nothing fancy, just things made with patience. But the people in town did not respect it. They saw a woman working with dirt under her nails and assumed she had failed. They did not see the morning she woke up before sunrise. They did not see the night she spent counting coins to pay for supplies. They did not see the moments when she sat alone after closing her small stand, wondering if everyone was right. There were days when Elara questioned herself. She wondered if protecting her mother's memory was worth struggling so much. She wondered if pride was keeping her from accepting reality. Those thoughts became stronger when the problem started. The first sign was a letter delivered to her house. It was not a normal business notice. It came from a man named Cassian Morel. Cassian was known throughout the city. He controlled several businesses. Some were legal. Others were surrounded by rumors. People rarely spoke his name loudly. The Morel family had influence, money, and connections. Many believed they were connected to the criminal organizations that controlled parts of the city. Elara had never met Cassian, but everyone knew about him. The letter said that he wanted to buy her property. The offer was much higher than the garden was worth. Too high. That was the first thing she noticed. She sat at the kitchen table with the letter in her hands for a long time. A part of her thought about accepting. With that money, she could finally stop struggling. She could move somewhere better. She could leave behind the people who laughed at her. But another part of her felt uncomfortable. Something about the offer did not feel right. The next day, a black carriage stopped near her house. A man stepped out. He was not old. He was not aggressive. He simply walked toward her garden and waited until she noticed him. "Miss Voss?" he asked. Elara looked at him carefully. "Yes, my name is Cassian Morel." She became quiet. She had imagined many things about the man who sent the letter. She expected someone colder, someone who would try to intimidate her. Instead, he stood there calmly. "I wanted to speak with you personally," he said. "About the land?" "Yes." Elara crossed her arms. "Everything you need to say is already in the letter." Cassian looked around the garden. Not at the house, not at the property lines, at the plants. "You take good care of this place." The comment surprised her. Most people only saw an old garden. She did not know how to respond. "It was my mother's." Cassian nodded. "I know." That answer made her uncomfortable. "How do you know?" He looked at the ground for a moment. "My father knew your mother." Elara felt a change in the conversation. She had not expected that. "My mother never mentioned your family." Cassian accepted the answer without arguing. Some people keep certain parts of their past private. There was something in his voice that made Elara think he was talking about more than business, but she did not ask. She had learned not to trust people with power, especially men who arrived offering more money than something was worth. "I am not selling," she said. Cassian looked at her. "Even with the amount offered?" "No." "Why?" Elara hesitated. She wanted to give a simple answer. Because it was her mother's garden. Because she loved that place. But the truth was more complicated. "I don't know what would be left of me if I gave away everything that mattered." For the first time, Cassian did not answer immediately. He looked at her differently. Not with pity, not with judgment, just with attention. Then he nodded. "I understand." Elara almost laughed. People rarely understood. They usually told her she was being foolish. But Cassian did not. Before leaving, he placed the letter back on the table. "You have time to think." "I already decided." "I know." He walked away. Elara watched the carriage disappear down the road. She expected to feel relieved. Instead, she felt uneasy. Because for the first time in months, someone had looked at her garden and seen something more than a failed business. That evening, she found another problem. A part of the garden fence had been damaged. Some plants had been destroyed. Not many. Just enough to send a message. Elara stood there holding a broken branch. She understood. Someone wanted her afraid. And she also understood something else. The offer from Cassian Morel was not just about buying land. There was something hidden behind that garden. Something her mother had never told her. And now Elara had to decide if protecting her mother's legacy meant facing a world she had always avoided. A world of money, secrets, and people who were used to getting what they wanted. For the first time, the garden was no longer only a place of memories. It had become the center of a conflict she never asked for. And Elara Voss, the woman everyone called a failure, was about to discover that sometimes the things people underestimate are the things with the greatest value. The next morning, Elara woke up earlier than usual. She had barely slept. The damaged fence stayed in her mind all night. She kept thinking about the broken plants, the strange letter, and Cassian Morel standing in her garden like he already knew something she did not. She made coffee and sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Before her mother passed away, mornings had always been different. There was always a sound coming from the garden, a tool being moved, a bucket being filled with water, her mother humming softly while working. Now the silence reminded Elara of everything she had lost. She looked at the old notebook beside her cup. She had read every page many times, but she still searched for something new, some explanation, some clue, something her mother had left behind. She turned the pages. Slowly. Most notes were about plants and recipes, but near the end, she found something different. A name. Morel. Her fingers stopped. The word was written beside a short note. "Some debts are not paid with money." Elara read the sentence again. Then again. She did not understand. Her mother had never spoken about debts. She had never mentioned Cassian's family, at least not to her. Elara closed the notebook. For years, she believed she knew everything about her mother. Now she was starting to realize that maybe she only knew the parts her mother wanted her to know. That thought hurt. Not because her mother had kept secrets, but because Elara wondered if her mother had carried problems alone, the same way Elara was doing now. Later that day, she opened her small market stand as usual. She arranged the jars carefully. She cleaned the table. She waited. The routine helped her feel normal, but things felt different. People looked at her more than before. Some whispered. Others stopped, talking when she walked by. The town had already started creating its own story. That was something Elara knew well. People did not need facts. They only needed something interesting to repeat. By noon, an older customer named Bram Ellison approached her stand. He had been buying her products since she started selling. He was one of the few people who never treated her like she was doing something small. "I heard about the fence," he said. Elara looked up. "People already know?" Bram gave a tired smile. In a small town, bad news travels faster than good news. She looked down. "I don't want trouble. I know. I just want to take care of the garden." Bram picked up one of the jars and looked at the label. "You know what people forget?" Elara waited. "They think success always looks impressive." He placed the jar back. "Sometimes success is simply refusing to abandon something important." His words stayed with her. But before she could answer, a group of men walked past the stand. One of them laughed. "So the gardener is still here." Elara ignored them. She had become good at ignoring comments. But that day was harder. Maybe because she was already tired. Maybe because she was starting to doubt herself. When the market ended, she returned home carrying the empty boxes. She expected another quiet evening. Instead, someone was waiting near the garden. Cassian Morel. Elara stopped. "What are you doing here?" He looked at the damaged fence. "I wanted to see the damage. Myself." "You sent someone?" Cassian turned toward her. "No." She studied his face. She wanted to believe him, but trusting him felt dangerous. "Why should I believe you?" "You shouldn't." The answer surprised her. Cassian continued. "Not yet. Most powerful people were used to being obeyed. They were used to others accepting their words. But Cassian did not ask for trust. He only stood there. That made Elara more confused. "What do you want from me?" He looked at the garden. "My family has business connected to this area. That explains nothing." "No, it doesn't." There was a pause. Then Cassian said something she did not expect. "Your mother helped someone in my family many years ago." Elara became still. "Who?" "My younger brother." She waited. Cassian looked away. "He was sick when he was young. Doctors could not help much. Your mother knew about plants and treatments that brought him some comfort." Elara remembered her mother helping neighbors. She remembered people coming to their house asking questions. But she never knew about this. "Why didn't he tell me?" Cassian was quiet for a moment. "Because some people feel embarrassed when they receive kindness." Elara looked at him. That sentence felt familiar. She had felt something similar. Many times. She had received help before and hated feeling like she owed someone. "Your mother never asked for anything," Cassian continued. "She refused money." Elara looked toward the garden. "That sounds like her." "Yes." The way Cassian said it was different. There was respect in his voice. Not the kind people showed because of status. The kind they showed because they remembered someone. For a moment, Elara forgot who he was. She only saw someone who knew a part of her mother that she did not. But then she remembered the rumors, the power, the fear people had around his name. She stepped back. "My mother's kindness does not mean I owe you this land." Cassian nodded. "I know. Then why keep making offers?" He took a breath. "Because there are people who want this property." "People from your family?" "No." That answer caught her attention. "Then who?" Cassian looked toward the road. His expression changed slightly. "People who do not care about what this place means." Elara felt a cold feeling in her stomach. She hated that she needed his help. She hated that her small, peaceful life had become connected to powerful people. "I don't want to be part of your world." Cassian looked at her. "Neither did I." The answer was quiet. Elara noticed something. For the first time, she saw that Cassian was not only the man everyone feared, he was also someone carrying things he never talked about. But before she could ask anything else, a car stopped near the road. Two men stepped out. They did not come closer. They simply watched. Cassian noticed them. Elara noticed too. The silence between them changed. Cassian spoke calmly. "Go inside." She looked at him. "I am not afraid." "I know." "Then why?" "Because being brave does not mean standing in danger when you don't have to." Elara wanted to argue, but she didn't. She went inside. From the window, she watched Cassian speak with the two men. She could not hear the conversation, but she saw enough. The men left. Cassian stayed for a few minutes. Then he walked away. That night, Elara could not stop thinking. She had spent months believing she was fighting against people who laughed at her. Now she realized she was facing something bigger. And the strangest part was not that Cassian Morel had entered her life. The strangest part was that the man everyone feared was the only person who seemed to understand why she refused to give up. Elara did not know what would happen next. But she knew one thing. Her mother's garden was no longer just about the past. It was connected to secrets that had been buried for years. And to protect what her mother left behind, Elara would have to learn something she never wanted to learn. Sometimes keeping your peace means finding the courage to face conflict. For the next few days, Elara tried to return to her normal routine. She opened the market stand. She worked in the garden. She cleaned the house. She followed the same small habits that had kept her moving after her mother's death. But something had changed. Before, her biggest concern was whether she would sell enough products to pay her bills. Now, she was looking over her shoulder. She noticed cars passing slowly near the garden. She noticed people asking questions they never asked before. She noticed that some customers suddenly avoided her stand. The town was watching, and Elara hated that feeling. She had always wanted a simple life. She never wanted attention. She never wanted to be connected to powerful people. She only wanted to protect a small piece of land that mattered to her. One evening, while organizing old tools in the garden shed, she found another box hidden behind a wooden shelf. It was covered in dust. At first, she thought it contained more of her mother's gardening notes. But when she opened it, she found old letters. Some were from neighbors. Some were from people thanking her mother for helping them. And one letter had a name written on the front, a name she recognized, Cassian Morel. Elara sat down. She did not want to open it. She felt like she was entering a part of her mother's life that she had never been invited into. But curiosity won. She carefully unfolded the paper. The letter was short. It was from Cassian's father. It thanked Morel Voss for helping his family during a difficult moment. But near the end, there was something else. A warning. Your kindness creates loyalty, but loyalty can become dangerous when powerful people misunderstand it. Elara read the sentence several times. Her mother had known. She had known that helping certain people could create problems. And still, she helped. That was the kind of person her mother was. She never measured kindness by what she would receive in return. The next morning, Elara went to the city. She needed answers. She found the Morel family office in an old building downtown. The place was different from what she expected. There were no signs of luxury, no unnecessary decoration, just quiet workers and serious conversations. When she asked to see Cassian, the receptionist immediately looked uncomfortable, but after a phone call, she was allowed inside. Cassian was standing near a large window. When he saw her, he looked surprised. "I did not expect you here. I found something." She placed the letter on his desk. Cassian looked at it. Then he became silent. "You knew about this?" "Yes." The answer bothered her. "You knew my mother had connections with your family, and you never told me." "I thought it was her story to tell." Elara looked away. Part of her understood. Another part of her felt betrayed. "She was my mother." "I know." "Then why did she hide this from me?" Cassian did not answer immediately. Instead, he sat down. "She wanted you away from this world." "What world?" He looked at the letter. "The world where every favor has a price." Elara remained quiet. Cassian continued. "My father believed every person could be useful. My mother believed people had value even when they could offer nothing. And my mother? She was like your mother." Elara looked at him. "What does that mean?" "She believed people could change." That answer stayed between them, because Elara had always believed the same thing. She just never said it out loud. Cassian stood and walked toward a cabinet. He took out an old photograph. He placed it on the desk. It showed 3 people, Cassian as a child, his younger brother, and Morel Voss standing beside them in the garden. Elara touched the photograph carefully. She had never seen it. "She was happy here," Cassian said. Elara looked at the picture. "Yes. She talked about you often." Those words made Elara look up. "About me?" Cassian nodded. "She worried you were too hard on yourself." Elara felt her throat tighten. Her mother had always noticed things, even things Elara tried to hide. "She said you were afraid of disappointing people." Elara looked down. because it was true. For years, she had carried that fear. When she left college to return home after her mother became sick, many people called it a mistake. When she refused to sell the garden, people called it stubbornness. When she started selling homemade products, people called it failure. And slowly she began to wonder if they were right. Maybe she was wasting her life. Maybe she was holding on to something that no longer existed. Cassian noticed her silence. Your mother was proud of you. Elara gave a small laugh. She never said that. She did not need to. That sentence stayed with her. Because maybe that was true. Maybe love was not always expressed through words. Sometimes it was shown through years of sacrifice, through meals prepared, through doors kept open, through someone believing in you even when you could not believe in yourself. Before Elara left, Cassian stopped her. There is something you should know. She turned around. The people interested in this land are not interested in the garden. Then what are they interested in? The location. She waited. There is a development plan for this area. If they control your property, they can connect several larger pieces of land. Elara understood. Her small garden was not valuable because of what grew there. It was valuable because of where it was. And they will do anything to get it? Cassian looked serious. They will try. Elara felt anger. Not fear. Anger. Because for the first time she understood that this was not only about her. People like her mother had protected places like that for years. Places that had no importance on paper, but mattered to people. When she returned home, she spent the afternoon working in the garden. She removed damaged plants. She fixed broken sections. She planted new seeds. It was simple work, but it helped her think. She realized something. She had spent years trying to prove she was not a failure. To neighbors, to relatives, to strangers. But maybe that was the wrong fight. Maybe her life did not need to make sense to everyone. Maybe it only needed to make sense to her. That night someone knocked on her door. Elara opened it carefully. It was Cassian. She was surprised. What happened? He held a folder. I found something that belongs to your mother. She hesitated before letting him enter. Inside the folder were documents, old property records, letters, and a handwritten note from Morel. Elara opened it slowly. The handwriting was familiar. The first line made her stop. My dear Elara, if you are reading this, it means you are facing a decision I hoped you would never have to make. She looked at Cassian, then back at the paper. For the first time since finding the garden's secrets, Elara felt something different. Not confusion, not fear. A sense that her mother had prepared her for this moment. She continued reading, and she had no idea that the words written on that page would change the way she saw her past, her future, and the man standing in front of her. Elara held the letter with both hands. For a few seconds she could not continue reading. Seeing her mother's handwriting brought back memories she had tried to organize in her mind for months. The way her mother used to leave notes on the kitchen table. The way she wrote shopping lists. The way she marked every plant in the garden with small wooden signs. Small things. Simple things. But those were the things Elara missed the most. She took a breath and continued. My dear Elara, I know you may feel confused right now. I know you may wonder why I kept certain things from you. I did not hide the truth because I did not trust you. I hid it because I wanted you to have a chance to build your own life without carrying my problems. Elara stopped. She looked down. That was exactly what her mother had always done. She carried things alone. She protected others from her worries, even when she was the one who needed help. The letter continued. This garden was never valuable because of the land. It was valuable because of the people who found peace here. Never let anyone convince you that something has no worth, simply because they cannot measure it. Elara swallowed. She looked around the room. The old wooden table, the faded walls, the small window facing the garden. For years she had been trying to protect a place. Now she understood that she was also protecting a lesson. Her mother had spent her life showing people that value was not always connected to money. At the bottom of the letter there was one more sentence. Trust carefully, but do not close your heart. Elara folded the paper slowly. She knew her mother. She knew those words had a reason, but she did not know what that reason was. Cassian remained silent. He had not interrupted once. That surprised her. Most people wanted to explain. They wanted to control the conversation, but he simply waited. Did you know about this letter? Elara asked. No. She looked at him. Not even a little? No. There was honesty in his answer. And she noticed something. Cassian Morel, the man everyone described as dangerous, was not trying to take control of the situation. He was allowing her to decide. That confused her more than anything. Why are you helping me? Cassian looked toward the garden. Because your mother helped my family when she had no reason to. That was years ago. Some things stay with people. Elara looked at him. She wanted to believe that. But she had spent too much time around people who only valued things when they could benefit from them. People usually expect something in return. Cassian nodded. You are right. The answer surprised her. But not everyone. The room became quiet. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Elara noticed small things about him. The tired look on his face. The way he avoided talking about himself. The way he seemed uncomfortable receiving kindness. It reminded her of something. He was not so different from her. Both of them had spent years carrying things they never explained. The difference was that Cassian had built walls around himself. Elara had built distance. That night, after Cassian left, Elara stayed awake. She thought about everything. Her mother's secret. The people trying to buy the property. The rumors about Cassian. And the strange connection between two families that had nothing in common. The next morning, she made a decision. She would not run. She would not sell because she was afraid, but she also would not fight blindly. She needed to understand who was behind everything. Over the next few days, Cassian helped her investigate the documents related to the property. They spent hours together. At first, the conversations were only about the garden, the land, the old records. But slowly they started talking about other things, small things, things neither of them expected to share. Elara learned that Cassian did not choose the life he had. He was born into a family where reputation mattered more than happiness. From childhood, he was taught that weakness could be used against him. He learned to stay quiet, to observe, to never show uncertainty. But the more she knew him, the more she realized there was a person behind the name. One afternoon, while they repaired part of the garden fence, Elara asked, "Do you ever get tired?" Cassian looked at her. "Of what?" "Of always being careful." He stayed silent. Then he answered, "Yes." It was a simple answer, but it revealed more than a long explanation. Elara understood, because she felt the same. She was tired of proving herself, tired of defending her choices, tired of hearing that her life was not enough. "You know," Cassian said, "most people would have sold this place. I almost did. But you didn't." She looked at the plants. "I was afraid of losing the last part of my mother that I still had." Cassian nodded. "That makes sense." Again, those simple words affected her, because for a long time people had tried to convince her that her attachment to the garden was irrational. But Cassian did not tell her that. He respected it. As the days passed, something changed between them. Not suddenly. Not like a story people tell to make things seem perfect. It happened through small moments. A conversation after a long day. A shared silence while working. A smile when one of them remembered something from the past. Elara noticed that she felt comfortable around him. And that frightened her, because trusting someone meant giving them the chance to hurt her. She had already lost enough. She did not want another disappointment. One evening, as they were finishing work, Cassian said, "I need to tell you something." Elara looked at him. "What?" "The people trying to buy your property are connected to my family." She became quiet. The information felt like a weight. "What do you mean?" "Years ago, my father made agreements with people who cared only about power. And now? Now some of them want this land." Elara stepped back. She felt confused. "You knew this was connected to your family?" "Yes." "And you still helped me?" "Yes." "Why?" Cassian looked at her. "Because doing what is right is not always the same as protecting the people you come from." Those words stayed with her, because maybe that was the real conflict. Not between her and Cassian, but between the people they were expected to become and the people they wanted to be. Elara looked at the garden, the place everyone underestimated, the place everyone called useless, and she finally understood something. The garden was never only about plants. It was about choices, about the courage to protect something meaningful when the world tells you it does not matter. But now she had a difficult decision. Could she trust Cassian Morel? Or was she making the same mistake her mother had warned her about, trusting someone without knowing the full truth? And before she could find the answer, a new problem arrived. A notice was delivered to her house. A legal document. Someone had officially started the process to take control of the property. The fight was no longer hidden, and Elara realized that protecting her mother's legacy would require more than patience. It would require courage. The legal notice stayed on Elara's kitchen table for 3 days. She looked at it every morning. She looked at it every night. She knew what it meant. Someone was no longer trying to convince her. They were trying to force her. For years, Elara had dealt with people who judged her choices. But this was different. This was not an opinion. This was a threat to the only thing she had protected since losing her mother. She wanted to feel angry. But what she felt most was exhaustion. She was tired of fighting battles she never asked for. One afternoon, she sat on the old bench in the garden, the same bench where her mother used to rest after working. Elara remembered something her mother once told her. When life becomes complicated, return to what is simple. At the time, Elara thought those words were only about gardening. Now she understood they were about life. She looked at the plants. They did not care who had money. They did not care who had power. They only responded to attention and care. Maybe people were not so different. Maybe what made someone strong was not what they owned. Maybe it was what they chose to protect. The following day, Cassian arrived with new information. He looked more serious than usual. "There is a problem," he said. Elara already knew. There is always a problem. Cassian accepted the comment. This legal action is being pushed by a group that wants to buy several properties in this area. And your family? My family is divided. She crossed her arms. That sounds convenient. Cassian looked at her. I understand why you think that. Do you? Yes. He did not argue. That was something Elara had noticed about him. He did not try to win every conversation. He listened, and after spending so much time around people who only wanted to be right, that felt unusual. Some members of my family believe power is the only way to survive, Cassian said. And you? He looked toward the garden. I used to believe that. Elara studied him. You don't anymore? No. Why? Cassian took a moment. Because I saw what it did to people. His answer was simple, but she understood. Money and influence could solve many problems, but they could also create new ones. That afternoon, Cassian helped her contact a lawyer who could review the documents. Elara noticed something. He never told her what decision to make. He never said she needed him. He simply gave her information and allowed her to choose. That mattered, because Elara had spent much of her life feeling like other people knew what was best for her. Relatives telling her to sell, neighbors telling her she had failed, people telling her that a quiet life was not enough. But Cassian did something different. He treated her like someone capable of deciding. The legal process moved slowly. During that time, Elara continued working. Every morning, she opened the garden gate. Every afternoon, she prepared products for the market. Every evening, she recorded expenses and organized supplies. The routine helped her stay calm, but not everyone respected her decision. One day at the market, a woman named Odelia Hart approached her stand. Odelia had always been one of the people who criticized Elara. She looked at the jars on the table. I heard you are fighting the Morel family. Elara continued arranging the products. I am protecting my property. The woman smiled slightly. You really think you can win? Elara looked at her. I don't know. That answer surprised Odelia. Most people expected confidence, a strong response, but Elara was honest. I don't know if I will win, she continued, but I know I cannot give up something important just because someone stronger wants it. Odelia did not answer. She simply walked away. Later that day, Elara thought about that conversation. For the first time, she realized something. Courage was not the absence of uncertainty. She had always believed brave people were those who never doubted. Now she understood that real courage was moving forward while doubt was still there. A few weeks passed. The relationship between Elara and Cassian changed slowly. They were still careful. Both of them had reasons to be. But there was trust growing between them. Not the kind that appeared overnight. The kind built through repeated actions. Cassian showed up when he said he would. He kept his promises. He respected her decisions, and Elara noticed the difference between words and actions. Anyone could say they cared, but actions revealed the truth. One evening, they were sitting outside the garden after a long day. The sun was disappearing behind the trees. Neither of them spoke for a while. The silence was comfortable. Cassian finally said, "My father would not understand why I am helping you." Elara looked at him. "Why?" "Because he believed people should only protect what belongs to them." "And you disagree?" "Yes." "Why?" Cassian looked at the garden. "Because my mother taught me something different." "What?" "That the things we protect show who we are." Elara smiled slightly. "That sounds like something my mother would say." "I know." They both became quiet. There was something strange about how similar their families were. Two mothers who believed in kindness. Two children who carried responsibilities they did not choose. Two people who were trying to become different from the world that raised them. But the peace did not last. A few days later, Elara discovered that some of her suppliers had stopped working with her. They were afraid. They did not want problems with powerful people. She understood. She could not blame them. Everyone had something to lose. That night she sat alone in the kitchen. The old fear returned. Maybe she was causing trouble. Maybe protecting the garden was selfish. Maybe her mother would have chosen a different path. Those thoughts became heavier. Then she opened the notebook again. She searched through the pages. Near the middle, she found another note. This time it was not about plants. It was about Elara. "I hope my daughter understands that protecting something does not mean carrying everything alone." Elara stopped reading, because that was exactly what she had been doing. Trying to prove she was strong. Trying to show everyone she could handle everything. But maybe strength was not refusing help. Maybe strength was knowing when to accept it. The next morning, Elara made a decision. She would stop fighting alone. She would ask for support. From the people who still believed in what the garden represented. She would tell the truth. Not a perfect story. Not a story where she was the hero. Just the truth. A woman trying to protect the last piece of her mother's legacy. And for the first time in a long time, Elara realized something important. The garden had given her more than memories. It had taught her how to stand. Now she needed to learn how to let others stand beside her. For the first time since the legal fight began, Elara decided to speak openly. She had spent weeks staying quiet. She avoided attention. She avoided asking for help. She believed that if she worked hard enough, she could solve everything alone. But her mother's words stayed in her mind. Protecting something does not mean carrying everything alone. So Elara made a different choice. She organized a small meeting in the garden. She invited neighbors, customers, people who had known her mother. At first, she thought only a few people would come, maybe 5 or 6. But when the day arrived, more people appeared. Some brought chairs, some brought food, some simply came to listen. Elara stood in front of them and felt nervous. She had spoken to customers many times, but this was different. This was not about selling products. This was about telling people why the garden mattered. She looked around. Many faces were familiar. People who had watched her struggle. People who had judged her. People who had supported her. She took a breath. "I know many people think this place is just old land." No one interrupted. "I know some people think I wasted my life protecting it." She paused. But this garden was never only about plants. She looked toward the house. It was where my mother helped people. It was where she taught me that small things can have value. Her voice remained calm. "I am not asking anyone to fight for me. I am only asking people to remember that some things are worth protecting." The meeting was simple. There were no big speeches, no dramatic promises, just honest words. And something changed. People began sharing their own memories. An older man talked about how Morel had helped his wife when she was sick. A woman explained that Elara's mother had given her plants to start her own small garden years earlier. Another neighbor said something Elara had never expected. "I always thought you were stubborn." A few people smiled. The woman continued, "But maybe I was wrong. Maybe you were just protecting something I did not understand." Elara did not know what to say. For years, she had felt invisible. Now she realized people had seen more than she thought. They just had not spoken. After the meeting, several neighbors offered help. Some helped repair the fence. Others offered to share her products with different markets. It was not a solution to everything. The legal battle was still there. The people behind the land deal were still powerful, but Elara no longer felt alone, and that changed the way she faced the problem. Meanwhile, Cassian was dealing with problems inside his own family. His decision to help Elara had created tension. Some members of the Morel family believed he was making a mistake. They told him he was damaging the family's interests. One evening, Cassian met with his uncle, Cassian Morel. Cassian had been involved in the family business for decades. He believed respect came from fear, not trust. "You are protecting a woman who owns a small garden," Cassian said. Cassian remained quiet. "It makes no sense." Cassian looked at him. "Not everything has to make sense to you." Cassian stared at him. That response was unusual. Cassian had spent years avoiding conflict inside his own family. But something had changed. For the first time, he was tired of pretending. "Cassian, we have spent years believing that having power means controlling everything. And I think we forgot what power is supposed to be used for." His uncle laughed softly. "You sound like your mother." Cassian looked away. Maybe that was not an insult. Maybe it was the first compliment he had received in years. Later that night, Cassian returned to the garden. Elara was still working. She looked tired. "You should rest," he said. She smiled slightly. "That advice sounds strange coming from you." "Why?" "Because you never rest." Cassian almost smiled. "Almost. I am learning." Those two words surprised her, because they showed something she had not expected. Cassian Morel, a man who seemed to have control over everything, was also changing. Slowly, quietly, like the garden. Elara noticed that people often expected change to be dramatic. They expected one moment that transformed everything. But most changes happened differently. A person chose differently one day, then again the next day, and after many small choices, they became someone new. As the weeks passed, the garden became more active. More customers came. More people visited. Elara's products started gaining attention outside the town. But success did not feel the way she imagined. She used to think success meant proving people wrong. Now she understood something different. Success was waking up and knowing she was living according to her values. One afternoon, while organizing supplies, Elara found Cassian sitting alone near the garden entrance. He looked distant. "What happened?" she asked. He looked up. "My brother left the city." "Why?" "Because he refused to follow the family's decisions." Elara sat beside him. "Is he safe?" "Yes." They remained quiet. Then Cassian said something unexpected. "I spent years believing my family was the only thing I had." Elara listened. "But now I realize sometimes the people who share your name are not always the people who understand you." She looked at him. "That must hurt." "It does." The honesty in his answer stayed with her, because Elara understood that feeling. Sometimes losing an illusion hurt more than losing a person. She had lost the illusion that everyone would understand her choices. Cassian had lost the illusion that loyalty always meant agreement. They were both learning the same lesson. Love and respect could not exist where people were forced to become someone else. A few days later, the court hearing date was announced. The final decision about the property would begin soon. The entire town knew. Some people supported Elara. Others believed she had no chance. The pressure returned, but this time, she faced it differently. The night before the hearing, Elara walked through the garden. She touched the old wooden signs her mother had made. She remembered being a child. She remembered feeling safe. Then she understood something. The garden had never promised to protect her from difficulties. It had taught her how to face them. The next morning, Elara entered the courthouse. Cassian walked beside her. Not in front, not leading. Beside her. And that small detail mattered, because Elara was no longer the woman people called a failure. She was a woman who had discovered her own strength. But inside that courtroom, she had no idea that the truth about the property would reveal something that even Cassian did not expect. The courtroom was smaller than Elara expected. After weeks of hearing people talk about the case, she imagined a place filled with powerful people, important conversations, and pressure from every direction. Instead, it was a simple room. A few tables, a few chairs, people waiting, quietly. That made her feel something she did not expect. Calm. She looked around and realized something. The people trying to take her garden had money. They had connections. They had influence. but they were still sitting in the same room as her. For the first time, Elara did not feel smaller than them. The hearing began. The lawyer representing the buyers explained that the property was underused. He talked about development, growth, economic opportunities. He described the garden as an old piece of land that was preventing progress. Elara listened. Every word sounded professional, reasonable. That was what made it difficult, because sometimes losing something did not happen through anger. Sometimes it happened through polite words. The lawyer made the garden sound like a problem, not a place, not a memory, not a part of a family's history, just a number on a document. Then it was their turn. The lawyer working with Elara presented the records, the history of the property, the documents showing that the land had been maintained for generations. Then he presented something unexpected, the old letters from people her mother had helped. At first, Elara wondered why those letters mattered. They were personal. They were not business documents. But then she understood. The case was not only about ownership, it was about value. The lawyer explained that the property had been used as a place of community support for years, not officially, not through contracts, but through real actions. The judge listened carefully. Then he asked a question. Why does this property matter so much to you? Elara was prepared for many questions, but not that one. She looked down for a moment. She could have answered with legal arguments. She could have talked about documents. Instead, she told the truth. Because my mother spent her life caring for this place. She paused. And because she taught me that something does not become worthless just because it cannot be measured in money. The room became quiet. Elara continued. I know a garden is not the biggest business opportunity. She looked toward the other side. I know there are people who could make more money from this land. Then she looked back at the judge. But I believe there are things that should not be judged only by profit. She finished speaking, and she sat down. She did not know if it was enough. She did not know what the decision would be. But she felt something different. Peace. Because she had finally stopped trying to convince everyone that her life had value. She knew it, and that was enough. After the hearing, Cassian waited outside. They walked silently for a while. Neither of them knew what would happen. Finally, Cassian spoke. You were different in there. Elara looked at him. Different how? You were not defending a piece of land. She waited. You were defending what it represented. Elara looked away. I used to think people only respected things that looked successful. Cassian nodded. A lot of people think that. But they are wrong. Yes. She smiled slightly. It was a small moment. But for both of them, it meant something. Because they had both spent years living according to expectations created by others. And now they were choosing differently. The decision did not come immediately. The waiting was difficult. Those weeks tested Elara more than the hearing itself. Uncertainty was harder than a direct problem. At least with a problem, she knew what she was. Fighting. Waiting forced her to accept that some things were outside her control. During that time, she continued working. She continued selling. She continued caring for the garden. And slowly, something unexpected happened. The people who once laughed began changing their opinions. Not because Elara became rich, not because she became famous, but because they saw her consistency. They saw that she did not leave when things became difficult. One morning, a former critic came to her stand. A man named Orson Vale. He had often joked about her choices. He looked uncomfortable. I owe you an apology, he said. Elara looked surprised. For what? For thinking I knew what success looked like. She did not say anything. He continued. I thought success was having more money than everyone else. He looked at the garden. But maybe it is also having something worth protecting. Elara accepted his apology. Not because his opinion mattered more now, but because she understood something. People changed when they learned. And sometimes people needed time to understand what they could not see before. A few days later, the decision finally arrived. Elara opened the letter at the kitchen table, the same place where she had opened the first offer from Cassian. Her hands were steady. She read the first lines. The court had decided in her favor. The property would remain hers. The development plan could not move forward without proper agreements and respect for the existing ownership rights. She read the letter again. Then she closed her eyes. Not because she could not believe it, but because she thought about everything that happened before that moment. The doubts, the fear, the nights wondering if she had made the wrong choice, the people who called her a failure, the people who told her to give up. And then she thought about her mother. She walked outside. She entered the garden. She touched one of the plants growing near the fence. For years she believed she was protecting the garden. Now she understood. The garden had also been protecting her. It had given her a reason to continue, a reason to stand, a reason to believe that a quiet life could still be a meaningful one. That evening, Cassian came to visit. He already knew the result. "I am happy for you," he said. Elara smiled. "Thank you." He looked around. "This place deserves to stay." She nodded. "Yes." There was a pause, a comfortable one. Then Cassian said, "I need to tell you something." Elara looked at him. "What?" "I am leaving the family business." The answer surprised her. "Why?" "Because I spent too much time trying to prove I could survive in that world." He looked at the garden. "And I forgot I had the choice to build something different." Elara understood, because she had also spent years trying to prove herself. But now both of them had learned the same thing. A person's value does not come from what others expect them to become. It comes from the choices they make when nobody is watching. They stood there together, not as two people who saved each other, but as two people who learned how to save themselves. And the final chapter of their story was not about money. It was about what they decided to do with everything they had learned. Months passed after the court decision. Life did not suddenly become perfect. Elara learned that victories did not erase every problem. The garden still needed work. The business still required effort. There were still difficult days. But something inside her had changed. Before, every challenge felt like proof that she was failing. Now, challenges were simply part of the journey. She no longer measured herself by the opinions of people who never understood her choices. The garden became busier. More people visited. Some came to buy products. Others came because they wanted to see the place they had heard so much about. But Elara never changed the way she worked. She still woke up early. She still checked every plant. She still cleaned the small wooden table where she sold her products. She never forgot where everything started. One morning, while organizing the garden, she found her mother's old gardening gloves. They were worn. The fabric was damaged. They were not valuable. At least, not in the way most people understood value. Elara held them for a moment, and she smiled, because those gloves represented years of patience, years of quiet work, years of someone caring for something without needing recognition. That was the lesson her mother had left behind. Not every important thing becomes important because the world notices it. Some things matter because they change the people connected to them. A few months later, Elara and Cassian created a small project together. They used part of the garden to teach others how to grow plants and create small businesses. It was not a large organization. It was not something that made them wealthy. It was something simple, a place where people could learn, a place where people could start again. Cassian was different now. He no longer spent his days trying to protect a reputation. He spent his days building something he believed in. Many people in the city were surprised by his decision. Some criticized him. Some said he had lost power. But Cassian no longer cared about those opinions. He had finally understood something. Power was not having control over others. Power was having control over your own choices. One afternoon, Elara found him sitting near the old bench, the same bench where she had spent many difficult evenings. "You look peaceful," she said. Cassian looked at the garden. "I think I finally know what peace feels like." She sat beside him. "For a long time, I thought peace meant having no problems. And now I think peace means knowing what is worth fighting for." Cassian smiled. It was a simple moment. No promises, no dramatic words. Just two people who had gone through difficult moments and found something honest along the way. Their relationship had not started because they saved each other. It started because they respected each other, because they saw the person behind the reputation, because they understood what it felt like to carry responsibilities nobody else could see. Over time, people in the town stopped calling Elara a failure, but that was not the thing that mattered most. The important change was that she stopped needing them to stop. She no longer needed approval. She no longer needed everyone to understand. She knew who she was. She knew why she stayed. She knew why the garden mattered. Years later, when people asked Elara about the hardest moment of her life, she did not mention the court. She did not mention the people who doubted her. She did not mention the rumors. She always talked about the moment she almost gave up, because that was the real battle. The hardest person she had to convince was herself. She had spent so much time listening to other people's opinions that she forgot to listen to her own heart. Her mother's garden taught her something important. Growth takes time. A seed does not become a tree overnight. A person does not become strong after one difficult moment. Strength is built through small decisions repeated every day. Choosing to continue. Choosing to learn. Choosing not to abandon what matters. Many years later, the garden was still there. The wooden signs were replaced. The fence was stronger. The house was repaired. But the spirit of the place remained the same. It was still a place where people came to find peace. A place where stories were shared. A place where people remembered that kindness could have a lasting impact. Elara often thought about the people who once laughed at her. She no longer felt anger toward them. She understood something. People often judge what they do not understand. And sometimes, the things they underestimate are the things that carry the most meaning. Her life was never about proving she was better than anyone else. It was about discovering that she was enough. That was the greatest lesson her mother left her. Not a house, not a garden, not a business. A way of seeing life. A reminder that success is not only measured by money, titles, or recognition. Sometimes success is waking up knowing you did not abandon the things that mattered. Sometimes success is keeping your values when the easier choice would be giving them up. Sometimes success is becoming someone you can respect. And that was the legacy of Elara Voss. The woman they once called a failure because she chose to care for an old garden. The woman they underestimated because she chose a quieter path. The woman who discovered that a person does not need the world's approval to build something meaningful. Her mother planted more than seeds in that garden. She planted patience. She planted courage. She planted a lesson that would continue long after she was gone. And that lesson was simple. What truly has value is not always what attracts attention. Sometimes the greatest things in life are the ones that only reveal their importance to those who have the patience to care for them. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. Elara's journey reminds us that our value is not decided by the opinions of others. Sometimes people will judge our choices because they cannot see the purpose behind them. But a meaningful life is not built by proving everyone wrong. It is built by staying true to what we believe is important. If this story touched you, share in the comments what lesson you take from Elara's journey. Subscribe to Wildwood Hearts, leave a like, and share this story with someone who needs to remember that quiet efforts can create a powerful legacy. Thank you for watching.